The ground beneath was 2 apples deep, and they fizzed and popped as I approached. Animals had picked clean the lowest branches. The wind was blowing through the surrounding birches. The boughs swayed. Nearby, a single rain-wet apple beckoned. I reached. It slipped beyond my fingers. Another wind. Again, the apple rose up, higher, and at the height of its curve, it seemed to pause as if considering the worthiness of its petitioner, and swung down into my hand. Thin veins of crimson ran through its spring green flank. Faint streaks of russeting, a blush that seemed to change in color as I raised it in the failing light. When I bit into it, I had the sense of tasting not only with my tongue, but deep within my palate, a scent more than a flavor, as light as lemon blossoms, before a second wave came spreading through like syrup. What in heaven was this? I wondered. An apple, of course, an apple in all ways, and yet I had never eaten an apple like this. No one had ever eaten an apple like this. Hey, everybody. So that was me reading a passage from this book here called Northwoods by Daniel Mason. So I finished this book last Friday, and I had the discussion on Saturday with my Normandy book club. This book was fantastic. Now, I went into this book not really knowing what it was about, and I don't think I even watched any videos the year that it came out, because this book came out I think it was in 2023 when it came out. And I didn't watch one single review of the book, but I remember hearing or reading somewhere that there was a lot of nature writing in the book. And so that made me, perk up and say, yeah, I want to read this one. So it got chosen, and we finally got a chance to read it. And I can't believe how good this book is. So the overall general idea of the book is this book takes place in the New England area. I think it's supposed to be Massachusetts, and it spans 400 years. So we're looking in particular at a yellow house in this New England area in Massachusetts with an orchard. And we're following all of the residents, temporary or permanent, that stay there over the 400 years. So when I picked the book up, the opening is about a Puritan couple, they're lovers, and it's about how they flee their colony. I found the opening so jarring. I was just really confused. Like I wasn't really sure. Like, am I reading things correctly? I wasn't really sure what I was reading. I had to go back and reread. And I was like, what is going on? So I continued on. I was a little skeptical, but I continued on. And I would say like around page 20-ish, maybe 17-ish, 20-ish, something like that. Something changed, and I started really to get into the book. And I started like really being immersed in the writing, in the descriptions, in the nature writing. I started really enjoying how this book was, fanning out. This book reminds me of an instrument, and the instrument is an accordion. As you know, when you play an accordion, it goes in and out like that. And that's what this book does stylistically. So this is not a typical linear book. It kind of has a linear, but not really, way of writing the story. And with each chapter, you get a new, I don't know if it's a new season. It kind of feels like you get a new season every time you're on a new chapter, but you also get a new, it's like a kaleidoscope of the US and all the changes the US makes over 400 years within the 12 chapters of the book. Stylistically, the book has lots of pictures. They're all black and white pictures. I'm going to be honest, I didn't really pay attention to these pictures. I was very much absorbed in the story, not so much the pictures, like that. Now, another thing about this particular copy, this is a British copy, paperback. It's coming in at 69 pages, but the font size is extremely small. I highly recommend getting a hardcover or just getting a Kindle version, unless you can stomach reading such small print. That was one of the things that I was not happy about, was having to go cross-eyed reading this book, even though I really, really loved it. Okay, so back to the book now. So as we go on each chapter, we are discovering new characters and new wild and wacky situations. Now, another thing about this book is you're going to get a series of various different types of writing. There's epistolary in here. There's like a pulp magazine in here. There are health records, I guess you could say, of someone. There's just a lot of different things. There's also, he plays with the language. So he writes the language, how, as readers, we're supposed to hear that language. He does that quite a bit in here. There are letters, journal entries, all kinds of different types of writing. So Mason has this way of making the story be something that is going to be a surprise. Every chapter, there is a surprise or surprises. And not only that, he's showing you about lots of different things, like this idea of home, knowing who lived in your home before, or imagining who could possibly live in your home after. Also looking at how much your home has changed over years. Being that I live in a home that is as old as, I think this home is as old as 1700s. I think my house is in that age. So you do think about, when you buy an old house, like, oh, wow, like, who lived here before, kind of thing. And so this is a kind of story that revolves around that, but the changes of life and the change that, these different characters go through. I find this book extraordinary because of the fact that the storyline is a bit complex with all the different characters and keeping up with some of the details. So as a reader, if you're interested in reading this one, I'm going to have to tell you to pay attention. Don't slack. Keep your focus on what you're reading, because a lot of clues are in what you're reading about what could be happening next, or maybe about, what happens to another character that you see one chapter and then you don't see them again. And then you're like, but if you don't read well enough or you read too fast, you might miss, what actually happened to that character. This being said, it's a lovely escape novel with many sprinklings of of magical realism, which, as you know, if you've been following me, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I don't usually get along with magical realism. I've only gotten along with it in certain books. And so I'll give you one is 100 Years of Solitude. Could get along really well with the magical realism in there. And I got along with the magical realism in here. There's a moment where you're either won over by this book and you are on for the ride, magical realism and all. Or you're the kind of person that is trying to read this story and pin it down to total absolute reality with no magical realism. I'm not having it. If you're going to be like that, then you're not going to like the book. But I feel like if you let the book take you on the road for a good story, you're going to really enjoy it. Now, another main part of the book, and it's pretty much the setting. So like the main setting is that we're in this yellow house in Massachusetts and we're going over 400 years. But the main backdrop of the book is nature. Nature is all throughout the book, and it is described in very big details. There's even a fantastic beetle description in here. I don't want to give any more details than that. Just fantastic. It's through the setting of nature that we get another layer to the story of North Woods. And of course, this cover is done so well because I feel like this is a very good representation of North Woods. I highly recommend this book. It's top-notch, very big top-notch literary fiction. Definitely a book not to be missed. Another big 5 stars for me. I absolutely loved it. And I'm sure I will read this one again because it's just that good. I highly recommend this one. North Woods by Daniel Mason.